we have so many things that we want to talk about and sort of demonstrate, because there have been so many people coming into divine wisdom in either new ways or they're coming into it for the first time. And so it's been really extraordinary for me to witness this personally with a lot of you and a ton of people that are not associated with the community, like through consultations and things like that. Now, while we call this what we do channeling, and that's mainly because we don't know what else to call it. Like we can call it lots of different things, but it's receiving information and conveying it in some way. And sometimes that is a vibration that's narrated just as a constant teaching or something. And sometimes it's a scene that's being described, or it's a reading of a field, or it's some aspect of ourself that we've just discovered. So all kinds of things. So even though this was sort of called a co-channeling thing, just know that it encompasses basically every kind of revelatory experience is what we're referring to. We thought that we would start this by talking about some basic things related to coming into these abilities. And this is based on our own experiences and our experiences with other people as well, and people that we know sort of more publicly, just to remind people about what happens as we learn that we have these capabilities, because it's a process to learn what to do with it, how to control it, how to access it, how to be new with that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk about some things up front about channeling or coming into these abilities. And then we're going to do a demonstration of how we do our thing, what happens with us when we meet weekly. And then after the session, we're just going to, come home with some tips and reminders about, developing the practices for yourself. First of all, just a reminder about this shifting definition of teacher, because traditionally teacher has been the person giving teachings to others. And that's very much sort of a separation consciousness model, right? But as we move ever more into a unitive kind of consciousness, teacher by definition begins to shift, because it is the field itself and the wisdom itself coming through us and coming through others that is becoming teacher, us becoming that wisdom that's being shared, but also the field from within which all of that wisdom is arising. Both of those are more and more being understood and experienced as teacher here in a unit of consciousness. And so just to reiterate again, these revelatory experiences can happen in any number of ways. And people like me, like I had metaphysical experiences, direct mystical experiences for like 20 years before suddenly I was channeling. And I began channeling when all of the collective energies were getting really, really stirred up at the very beginning of the pandemic. And so there was a big energetic thing happening in the collective, and my work is always very connected to the collective. So that's how my new experiences began. And then Corene just began to come into her experiences.
I guess my awakening started about 10 years ago in the middle of a marriage breakdown, because I was desperate for answers about what was really going on, not just in my life, but I just didn't understand life. I started to do automatic writing. I think I might have listened to a podcast or something, and I thought, I'll give this a go. And I did that for a long time and often got very, very useful information. But I was also aware that my mind was also involved a lot of the time. And it was a mixture of other information. And I could sense there was a difference between ego and truth in what I was writing. And then I am a bit of a hummingbird or a butterfly or something. I just dip into different traditions and different kind of techniques. And a really, really significant opening for me was using mala beads and chanting Hindu beej mantras, which are seeds, syllables with really, really powerful energy behind them. And that completely blew open all sorts of things for me. And then I think that was in 2017, 2018. I had significant openings. And then as we moved into 2020 and started to work with Mary, I shifted from being sort of like a facilitator for Mary in sessions into sinking into meditation and realizing I'd put Mary on a pedestal. And I thought, she's the mystic, she's got all the wisdom, I'm just going to listen to it. But I realized this whole time that there'd been information coming through, but I'd been not that I didn't believe it, but I was very shy about sharing that. But because I feel so safe with Mary, we just developed this really easy relationship of asking each other questions. And so, but I just want to say that everybody's experience will be completely different. And if you don't have any experiences of informational images or anything, that's fine. It could be that you just feel energy, or that you just have an instinct about something. It doesn't need to be spectacular at all. And these things can take a long time, or they can happen suddenly.
So you touched on two things that I'm going to reiterate here, and I'm going to use Paul Selig as a good example. For those of you who don't know Paul is a channel who has, he's now getting ready to channel, I think, his 10th book. He channels them publicly. He sits down and he just channels this stuff, usually in 5-day workshops in front of people. And then he's literally just, his guides are narrating a book. And then the books are completely unedited. It's every word he's just sat down and spoken. So he literally just sits down and narrates a book out of him. And then now he's coming on the 10th book, and the books are really, really good. They're very loaded with a lot of energy. So he's a really, really good channel. But Paul Selig didn't sit down to do that publicly until after 18 years of gathering with, a few people in his living room and doing that. So it took a really long time for both him and the guides and the world to sort of be ready for what was about to happen with him. It took him a long time to adjust to that. And the guides finally asked him to stop smoking. He was a 4-pack-a-day smoker. So they asked him to stop smoking before the books started. And so he did that. And Paul is very much, in his own words, he can be a big curmudgeon. So he's, kind of grumpy and cranky, and his mind can get really engaged as he's channeling. And so the guides will say, Paul is interfering again. Paul doesn't like it when we say blah, 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 blah. So, but he's aware, and he's saying it, that my mind is getting engaged here. So Paul is aware that his mind and ego still gets engaged in these, but he separates it out, which is him and which is the divine information. And this is a very big piece of learning to work with our abilities, is discerning. As Corene mentioned, I can tell when my mind gets engaged, and you can tell there's a little bit of a different feel to it. This is a very big aspect of learning to adjust to these new abilities, is discerning, when is my mind getting engaged, and can I just relax and then trust myself to let this deeper information come through. We can always tell when our mind is getting engaged as well, when something happens and we're like, well, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
At the moment, or when we're with somebody and so we're saying, oh, that doesn't make any sense, or this is too simple, give me something else. Or, you could tell when your mind is coming in to direct the show, right? So it's a constant practice to just let it relax, just let it relax, just let it relax. Again, as you know, I speak all the time about that this whole entire process is such a profound, compassionate act for the mind. Our mind is the thing that just keeps wielding, desire to get it right, to achieve, to figure it all out, to control, to help us be okay. And it's the very thing that's creating and carrying the burden. So this whole direct wisdom way is such a compassionate act for our blessed minds. I think I want to mention just one thing on the ethics. Ethics is also tied to the mind and the ego piece as well. What's important to remember in sharing the information that comes through, because a lot of people are compelled to share information that comes through, which is understandable. Divine wisdom is like making its way into this reality for a reason, right? And we feel compelled to want to share that often. We are responsible for our state of being whenever we are allowing that information to come through, sharing that information with others, and when we are taking it in, when we are on the receiving end. If you're sitting in a state of being and speaking through a filter of fear and judgment, that's going to be in the energetic load of what comes through. And the same thing is happening if you're sitting in fear and judgment, receiving that, right? So we have to take responsibility for our own energetic state of being, in particular when we're allowing that information to come through and share it with others, being very mindful about, am I really truly allowing this openness and the truth to come through? And we're going to talk later a lot more about discernment. And then the last thing I just want to mention before we open this up is many of you have experienced there's like this great opening and then it doesn't feel like anything happens for a while and you're like, oh, I lost it. What did I do wrong? And the flow will ebb and flow, ebb and flow. And as Corene, as you all know, last year, Corene didn't have anything for a full year because she was so immersed in grief over the death of her mother. And so she had amazing things happen in 2020 and then absolutely nothing in 2021, and then emerged in 2022 with like loads of new openness and access. So don't be fretting if there's an openness and then a loss and an openness and a loss. This is everything is an integration process. And it's the same with our abilities, right? We're just letting everything adjust in its own time.
Can I just add something to that?
Mm-hmm.
I have gone through phases of almost being too enamored with these kind of big mystical experiences and not giving myself enough time to actually integrate what's come through. Because you get high, like literally, because it's so fascinating and there's a real compelling quality to it and it's lovely to escape into that. But it's very important to give you genuine time to integrate whatever's come through, because you can spin out, particularly if you're doing this by yourself, you can spin out and lose sense of, just functioning in your world and getting things done. Or you can get too out there, and sometimes it's very difficult to get back. So take it easy if you're new to this or you've had big experiences before and you have a tendency of doing that. Just be mindful that you really owe it to yourself to integrate, to really sit with what's come through. I mean, for instance, there's a recording of a session that Mary and I did in 2018, and even now it's at 4 years. Mm-hmm. I still think we're integrating that one session. Mm-hmm. The same information it's so fresh right now, and we're seeing it from a completely different angle. So sometimes it's something simple is all you need. You don't need, weeks and weeks and weeks of material.
Yes.
Sometimes it's just one simple thing that you need to sit with and really think about and integrate.
It really is, because it can knock you off kilter and it can really make it difficult to stay in balance in your day. I speak from a lot of experience with that, a lot of experience. It can really knock you for a loop. So it's a very self-compassionate thing to do, to take your time to integrate information that has come through, especially if you feel compelled to share it. You may want to make sure that you're just in a very, steady state before you reach out and do that. And in the experience that you're talking about in 2018, a lot of the information that came through in that, and that, by the way, is a public video called Integrating Unitive Consciousness, which I've shared with you previously. A lot of what was spoken in there is related to what we're doing here today, which is the field. We are becoming the understanding itself, right? We are becoming the teachings as well as the teachers. So a lot of that is related to this very thing that's underway right this moment. Corene, do you want to share more about anything about your experience, the ways that you experience information, or you
Yeah.
mentioned when we met before this, sort of your arc of how things came about.
Yeah, so I think initially, obviously, it was writing, and I didn't get a sense of that being anything other than, I suppose, and labels. I think at this point we use them because we have no other words to describe them. I guess when I was doing automatic writing, it was tapping into my higher self. But then when big openings happened, I would see in meditation by myself a lot of the time beings. Like I would see Hindu gods, or I would see Jesus in physical form in my mind's eye very, very clearly. And I would have conversations with those beings. And one of the challenges when you're doing this by yourself is you don't have anybody to witness that, and it's not recorded necessarily. And so I would be left with these kind of massive experiences and huge, sometimes wonderful information. Over time, I've got those experiences have been less dramatic and more expansive in terms of they're less about a relationship with an individual teacher or God or something like that. I say God as in a divine, I don't know, an individual divine being, whereas I now think of God as all sorts of things. And now it's less about those dramatic encounters as it is about understanding that the divine field that we're in is me. It's more about energies and integrating. I guess it's less about separating me from a being and seeing that I am also a being in this field, shared as an equal with these others that I initially, I think, is a natural progression of thinking God is higher than us,
Right.
and that we're separate. And that's completely dissolving. And it's very, very natural. In my experiences now, I would often just get an image, or I will get an energy, or I'll hear one word, and then that will be the opening. And then it's just information that's coming through. It's almost like I'm just taking dictation from some aspect of myself or the field. I'm not sure. And I always trust.
You know how Corene was saying that, she used to see beings and then it became more about the energy. And the same thing for me. Like I started with Jesus and Buddha and archangels and, lots of beings in my experiences in particular. And that's kind of slowly faded away. And in the 2018 experience, they were saying that there's not to be concerned if you're not experiencing these luminous beings, that we're discovering the luminosity of ourselves, right? That we are becoming those beings, but also in a separation consciousness, right? We have grown up with our conditioned idea that there needs to be an other, right? Jesus as another, God as an other, Buddha as an other, information or wisdom as other. But in a unitive consciousness, we don't have to be other. We can be in and as, right? So this is how we become the wisdom. And I remember again in that 2018 experience, they reiterated many times, we are no longer going to be that which is given the wisdom. We are becoming the wisdom that is given, right? It's just this whole turnaround. Okay, we're going to demonstrate to you all now what we do when we hang out. You're coming into our private world now. We meet every Saturday night. We did this most of 2020, and we'd been doing it in 2019. We actually started in 2019, but for very different reasons, just to sort of provide some support for each other. But this year, we just sort of started up in, I don't know, January or February. And so we've been meeting every Saturday night, and we usually meet at least an hour and a half or 2 hours. And we have no agenda usually when we get together. Our whole entire purpose is to come together and see what happens. That's it. We will talk about our day. We'll talk about things that are going on with us. Sometimes one of us has a particular issue that we're dealing with and we need a little help or support or information. By the time we settle in, we're already getting really swirly headed and starting to really kind of connect and sink into our connection with each other. So that's what we're going to do now.
Before we do that, what's the question that we're just open to whatever's
Yes, we're just going to demonstrate what we usually do. And we don't have any particular question tonight, I don't think, do we?
I think that maybe what is in the highest interest of this group to know today,
Sure.
or something like that.
Yep. Given the intention of this gathering, and specifically recognizing among all of us that the field itself is teacher, but in this moment in particular, we're open to the field as teacher, recognizing that it is coming through us in very enlightening, awakening, revelatory kinds of ways. And so we are here to facilitate and support that, and to sort of incite a sense of comfort and confidence and greater openings. So given that, we're open to whatever information comes through that's in the highest interest of this group. Now, what happens with Corene and I is that one of us, we never know who's going to take us in any given night. And we just wait. We will go in, we'll open it up, we'll make the invitation, then we'll just wait. And we wait as long as it takes for information to start coming through, either an image or a being has shown up or something is seeking to be narrated. It may take a minute, it may take 10 or 15 minutes. We have no idea, but we honor the process, and we are intending to model for you the reality of how it works when we do this together. Okay. Do you want to guide us in, or shall I?
I think I will tonight.
Beautiful.
Okay, so let's just start by, been talking a lot, so let's just be quiet for a second and just do some breathing. And imagining on the out breath that the out breath is full of words that are left unsaid. Inviting in more and more peace. And bringing to mind an image of an ocean. Just observing sensing the vastness of an ocean. And merging with the energy of peaceful ocean. So I'm feeling quite a lot of energy in my forehead, my third eye, which normally doesn't happen.
Can we make the invitation here for all guides, all teachers, all companions who wish to be here with us tonight, into this field into our awareness for that which is in our highest interest, the highest interest of all whom we impact.
And so I'm hearing quite distinctly, blessed, blessed, blessed gathering.
Mm.
And that's to include everybody on the call tonight and the two of us.
And I am hearing and experiencing the repetition of amplification, amplification, amplification.
And I'm seeing in a column of light that sort of instantaneously expanded. And this is showing the power of community and collaborative intention to be open to divine wisdom. That very strong message that everybody listening does have access, and access is not even the right word. Everybody who is listening now is wisdom. You are all wise beyond what your mind will tell you you are. They're really driving home the dissolution of distinction between wisdom as something outside of you and wisdom as who you are. As truth is who you are. And this is very closely tied to all of the teachings on I am. So the word reclamation is very clear as well. A reclamation of truth, of wisdom, of you as source of all that is. This is not something that the egoic mind is capable of understanding. This is an embodied, and it's not even an experience. It's just embodied. See, the word experience suggests something outside of you as well. I am experiencing this and this, and you're not experiencing it, you are it. In modeling this, we are it. We are the wisdom. We are the truth. Don't need to seek this. Nothing is outside of you. Nothing.
On that note, there's a guidance here for everyone in this moment to hold on that note that you don't have to seek this. Everything is already within. And there is a guidance to feel that truth within you. Feel the reverberation of the truth. That you are the wisdom. All wisdom is already within.
So there's a clear message here that for those who are yearning, longing for truth, and are using their minds as the avenue to find that with, devouring spiritual teachings and readings and so on. There's an honoring of that yearning, that longing for truth. But there's a very clear message that the truth is not in the books, in the words, it's in the experience of becoming those words, realizing you are what you are seeking. But there's so much compassion for the seeking, so much compassion. And the mind is doing its best to facilitate the seeking. But it's like, it's very sweet because it's missing the point, because the point is you already are that what you're seeking out for. And so there's an invitation to sink into the ocean of who you are. So there's a image in my mind of a simple droplet of water. And within that drop of water, there's billions of molecules. And then that drop of water is added to a small vessel, a cup, and then a bucket. And then a river. And a lake. And an ocean. You see how you are all of those things. You are the molecule. You are the water drop. And then you are all of these bodies of water. There's no end to you. And you can simultaneously be that molecule, aware of its separate self and its connection with the field of endless water all around it. Because you're the same substance. Do you understand? The substance is the same. The separation between substance and form is just a thought. So the more you give yourself permission to sink in, to rest, the more and more naturally awareness of the truth will arise. You don't need to seek it. There's no effort, which is what consensus is referring to, the path of ease. Easy with yourself, gentle with yourself. Do you have anything, Mary?
I'm going to ask a question here into the field, and we'll see what answer comes about here, which is there's a clear power that happens when we sink in together with others, as is demonstrated in the songs, as is demonstrated in our gatherings together, you and I, Corene, and our gatherings with other people and others who gather together with someone else recognize this as well. So we'll just put the question out into the field here to elicit the answer of why there is that power when we gather with others in this same intention.
I'm seeing, well, the first thing is amplification, but then I immediately saw fairy lights. So an individual fairy light can illuminate a section of darkness. You bring together one or two or more. I don't know if this is the word, conjoining of light amplifies the ability of each other fairy light to illuminate. It's almost like I'm feeling like there's an energetic current that runs between each person and another person. And this happens, in casual interactions, in friendships, in close relationships. So there's different qualities of energy in our relationships, and we can all feel this. That's why you, particularly those you're close to, you're attuned to their energy. And we enter into a meditative state. There's a deepening and a shifting quality of the energy that's shared between individuals, and a network effect occurs when there's more than two. And there's no consciousness is not required to activate this. It's just simply the intention, that shared intention. And it's like it just creates, I can see it. I can see there's a distinct configuration of patterning in the field that occurs in these gatherings, which is why individuals now and in satsang or in smaller gatherings will and are experiencing openings, different experiences, and so on. So part of the importance of this work for us, that's you and I, Mary, but everybody who's gathered here, is to offer grounded presence for those coming into this who are on the periphery. There's this sort of there's a magnetic quality to this. But notice I said there's a network. It's not a hierarchy. It's not a hierarchy.
Yes. When you first began to talk about the fairy lights, as you were starting to speak, I was immediately experiencing what you might call the network or the patternings within the field, which was like a kaleidoscope that, if you might imagine one person looking into a kaleidoscope and then it's joined by another, which then exponentially expands the units that are moving and engaging as two or more people are coming together. And this is a patterning that's happening multi-dimensionally, not just one-dimensionally, which is why there is such a powerful effect then of people having more access to information. Multi-dimensionally, things are more open as two or more people come together. Which is the network you speak of, if you will.
Oh, my head is spinning. There's a real sense of just being a watershed experience somehow. And a kind of combination of congratulations and gratitude and like this is not the first time I've seen this. I can see beings in a conga line. Oh my goodness, it's so funny. And it's like now in the stadium, so it's like this enormous woo. And this is to make the point, it doesn't have to be serious, all of this. You know, it's all right to have fun and bring your sense of humor along. Because we all need to lighten up a little bit like the fairy lights.
There's such wisdom in that.
Yes.
As Consensus said, there is such wisdom in joy. Joy is always wise.
And this is a great way of cutting through ego, yeah? Because ego likes to take itself so seriously. I'm getting a sense that this is towards the end of what needed to be shared today.
And I'm hearing a massive thank you, thank you, thank you. They're actually yelling it.
Okay, thank you. No problem. A pleasure.
Okay. Does the session feel complete then?
Yes.
Okay, let's take a nice, good, slow, deep breath in. Just relax through the body. Well done, Corene. Well done.
Thank
Holly said, thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes. You're welcome, you're welcome, you're welcome. So we have a few things that we just want to mention here before we go. And this is really, again, just in support of everyone who's having these new openings or sitting at the precipice of it or feeling supported by the field in this way. The first is very important, just, developing some kind of daily practice, and specifically in that, approaching the daily practice with a kind of curiosity, right? Trying different things. As Corene said, it wasn't until she happened upon the chants, right? The Hindu chants or something, that things just completely opened up. So really just try lots of different things and see what kinds of, openings happen, or different levels of comfort or whatever, with different things. And one of those things, we've talked about this previously, it's been very effective for several people recently to do the non-dominant hand writing in a meditation before and during and things like that. So really, really do a couple of practices really committed to using that non-dominant hand writing, and see, just explore how that goes, because amazing things have opened up with several people with that. The other thing is really just to allow everything to take time. Not only taking time in the integration of the information you receive, but sitting for a long time, just allowing the information itself. It takes time for us to really relax everything. And then, some of that stuff is kind of traveling quite a distance to rise up in our awareness. So be very patient. Any kind of expectation of needing the information like that is just a pressure and a resistance on the natural flow. So be sure to take your time with it. A very important thing that's come up several times with people is, if information comes up that you think, oh, yeah, I know this, or this is too simple, this is not, don't dismiss the information that comes up, because you have no idea why it's coming up in that moment, in that way. It may be just sort of a door opener for something else. And this is especially true if you're sharing a meditation with someone else, because you may have, think this is completely silly and common knowledge or whatever, but the other person may really need in that moment to hear this particular thing. So here's just a reminder to not let the mind control the information that's coming out, either within you or sharing with somebody else. Corene, did you have more?
I have three more things. So you can ask for, what do I need to know, or what's in my highest interest, but going in with a question. I know that sounds really obvious, but really thinking about the question and the intention that you're setting before you go in. And I think Mary did this naturally, but calling in your guides, your support, so that the information that comes through, set the intention that that information is from divine source. Because, you want that. You don't want garbage. You want truth. You want divine truth. The other thing that I find useful, because I have a very active mind, is if I'm by myself, there's different apps on most phones now come with a voice recorder. I verbally say out loud what's coming through, because if I'm keeping it in my mind, A, I forget it. B, my mind gets involved and it gets very confused. Whereas if I'm verbally speaking out what's coming through, it's just like what you saw. It tends to be much more pure. And so right now, I can't actually remember a lot of what we just did, but I'll be able to listen to it. So that's another thing. And then there was one more thing. Oh, if you're a bit high after this, which I think a lot of people will, go and sit in under a tree, ground yourself physically in nature, and drink lots of water, because you can really disassociate, which it feels good, but we need to function and give your body a chance to process this, because a lot of energy is kicked up.
I do want to reiterate this idea of making the invitation for your guide, because that's actually stating out loud the intention to connect and the intention to allow and receive. So it's very, very good to just invite in. And I'm not one to invite in specific guides other than consensus usually, because how do I know what guide I need in the moment, right? So I usually just ask for all guides or teachers or wisdom that's in my highest interest and in the highest interest of all whom I impact. So I would keep it kind of open-ended unless you have a particular connection to different aspects of yourself or different teachers or whatever that you feel might be right in the moment. So I love you all so much. Thank you for being here. May our time together be of benefit to all beings. Namaste.
Namaste. Namaste. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.